Welcome to the 8th installment of Through the Looking Glass. Today we will be brushing back up on a topic that we wanted to extend 2 weeks back: people disappearing in our national parks. Now, Lucy, would you like to start us off on that, on this little expanded topic? So, what makes his cases different than just regular disappearances? Yeah. Yeah. Um, Hold on. We got a audio issue. Um, they can't hear you guys. Hold on. Voice and video. Input device. Alright, go ahead and talk. Can talk again? I don't know why this is not picking you up. Hold on a second. Sorry for the technical issues, guys. We had some setup rearrangements. Let me see if I can get this to pick up your audio. No, it's showing on my audio that it's not picking you guys up. All right, talk now. It's not picking you up for some reason. Properties. All right, try it now. No. Last. This is the last one we can try. All right, try it.
Hello.
There we go. Now we got it. Did that work? If you're watching the stream.
Yeah, I heard myself. We're all good.
All right. Yeah, that's what was fucked up with it. All right. Well, sorry about that little audio problem we had there, guys, but we got it. We got it worked out now. Yeah. Now, when it comes to these cases, like, they're just really weird because it's not like somebody like disappears like out by themselves. Usually, it's just like the guy was like right beside you and he just fucking vanishes. You know, like that makes no sense at all. And like the scent dogs can never find a trail, and they like just going through what David Palladius has said. Like the things that group these cases together is it's always like a boulder area, like being around granite, being in a place where devil's in the name, just really weird things, and like it's just not explainable by any stretch of the imagination. Like something is like taking these people or hiding these people or something. Like you would almost think that it would be like a land cave in, but like there's no evidence of that, you know?
I was surprised when I was reading up on this for the part two that we actually have something called the Great Lakes Triangle. which is I didn't realize that we had our own like little Bermuda Triangle where like hundreds of people have just kind of gone missing, and that's a relatively small area compared to how much coverage there is for the different parks. So, but
Yeah.
one thing I've noticed is that some of these people, it's like they disappear. Some of them come back without clothes or with different clothes.
Yeah, it's like people entering a fugue state almost. Like it's like these
I was
people.
looking at this article.
Go ahead.
Fluff.
Go ahead.
I was looking at this article on Thought Catalog, and they had some interesting ones. Like, and some of these people are people that you think like could handle themselves, like Army veterans, or they had some very weird cases. Like there's a 3-year-old boy where he survived, thank God. He goes by
Yeah.
the name John Doe in the article, and his parents obviously were grilling him about what happened, and he was saying some really weird stuff, like, "Grandma, I was with grandma," and it's like, and the kid at first he thought it really was his grandmother, and then he said that his grandma wanted him to take like a poop on like this like sheet.
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, I don't want to do that." And then that's when things started going downhill. And the kid I mean, this is a kid, but he recounted, he said in this cave that there were things that looked like people or like more like robots, like they weren't moving. That's kind of
Yeah.
spooky, you know. And I'm more of a rational guy, but the more I've read into this stuff, I was kind of trying to refute you guys when we were doing part one, but it's like, this is starting to get very weird. And like this article in particular says there's a theme, like it seems like people go missing when they go and like pick berries. That seems to be a
Yeah.
recurring one.
Yeah.
And then they had another guy where, get this, I mean, I don't want to sound sexist, but it's like this guy goes missing for 15 months and then comes back and he's wearing completely different clothes. He's got like
Yeah.
some map which doesn't make any sense. I mean, we're not talking about like some teenager who got knocked up and is trying to come up with an excuse. I mean, this is some guy, 15 months later, he comes back to his dad's door.
Yeah.
Can't remember anything.
That's just like
So,
the one that got me, man, was the park ranger that went on the hike by himself and disappeared. They started searching for him the next day, and like they were hearing gunshots in the park and stuff, and like radio interference, and then they found him like a week later, right outside of the front hut, and he had like bandaged his head, and his radio was dead. But they said that his firearm was never discharged. Like it's just like these people are being pulled away, and like you mentioned the like huckleberry patches and things like that. There was this one where like it was a little girl and a little boy, and the little boy got abducted. And the little girl, when they asked what happened, they said that the bear man gave me berries and told me to be quiet, and he was going to play with my little brother for a couple minutes. And she said that her little brother got up on the bear man's shoulders, and it got down on all fours, and it rode away. You know what I mean? Like a bear would, like ran away. It's just crazy. And they said no, and she even was adamant. She was like, it was not a person. There was no way it was a person. And she was a young
that's the
kid.
weird part,
Yeah.
because the kids differentiate. I mean, I get the creeps looking at some of these. Like, here's another one that's a personal story about a guy who believes he almost got snatched, and this is an Iraq veteran. These are people you don't usually want to tangle.
Yeah.
Let me get the link.
One of the most tricky ones to think through in my mind was a case where this man in I believe 20 or 30s he was an avid hiker. He hiked a lot. I don't think he was actually hiking, but he was out in a national park for the winter. He was in communication with his dad. He said, "I'm just going to go do this," or whatever. It was just some normal, I forget if he was going out to the store, going for a short hike, but it was the winter, so it wasn't smart to be walking through the mountains. Plus there's, 10 or 20 foot drifts of snow. So that's not really an option. But what happened is he went disappearing, and they didn't hear anything from him for a day.
Yeah.
And his dad was calling the national park and calling everybody he could, because his dad, I believe, was part of the Air Force or some kind of commander at an Air Force base.
Yeah.
So he got as many people on this as he could. And they swept the area several times, couldn't find anything. And a few months later, I believe, in the spring when all the snow thawed, they found some of his remains in like a crevasse in a mountain, which even during the summertime when there's no snow would be almost impossible to climb. And now this was during the winter when there's 20 or 30 feet of snow on the ground in the mountains.
Yeah.
And also, they found him missing some of his clothing, which makes no sense at all. You know, if it was in the middle of a winter in a storm, to think that it's even possible that he could do that is a stretch. And to think why he would do that as somebody who knows what he's doing and who's smart about nature makes no sense at all.
Isn't that the same guy that had the translocator beacon on him and he like set it off? And like the official story is that he like hiked up to the top of the cliff during the storm and then fell into a crevasse, activated his beacon and died. Like, there's no way he would do that. Who
I think there might have been 2 stories like that.
Yeah, there was a story where this guy called his wife and was like, "Hey, I'm gonna be coming home after this quick hike." He knew there was a storm coming in, so he even said, "I'm coming home early because of bad weather." So he goes missing, and the only reason, and his beacon didn't fully like activate or something, like it was glitching out, because the only way they were able to find it is the plane that was looking for the beacon flew right over where it was and happened to pick it up. But the official story is that he went to the top of the hill during the storm and then fell off into a crevasse and activated his beacon and died. Like, this just doesn't make any sense, man. These people aren't doing this shit of their own free will, you know?
All I know is I'm just going to jump with both feet into the surreal. I mean, I'm getting some chills. I posted that Reddit link. And, this guy, he basically, you remember we were discussing the Uncanny Valley? What was that, episode 2? I mean, that's the feeling I just got with this description that he gives. And he says that basically he was minding his own business and somebody just came at him. Like they were running very, like, too fast. And he was almost like, "Hey, what the hell's wrong with you?" And then he realized this woman in like bright red, pristine red clothing had no distinguishing features. Like, think about that. Like you look at a woman or man or dog or cat, and there's always something that will set them apart.
Yeah.
There's always something, and it's like, it just really weirds me out. And in fact, one of the Redditors gave an opinion that perhaps, because it gets a little spooky, people a little anonymous there, but it's like maybe it was some sort of cloaking device, but that bright color. And then they had another case with a woman where she went to go look at a sign, a nice bright sign. You see and she goes to look at the sign and she realizes it's some national park sign. Well, she looks behind us and suddenly, where is she? She goes from looking at the sign to being what's known as like a lost person. Yeah. And they do have, I guess that's an actual case called lost person behavior, which is where you start freaking out and instead of rationally thinking about, okay, well, let me look at my footsteps, follow my foot, because that's what I would do. Yeah. I would try to look to see, check the trail behind me, see if I left anything and go that way. Well, some people just go full bore. And then you're really lost.
Yeah.
Like if you go the wrong way, you're not going to go the wrong way for like, unless you're very observant, you're not really going to realize that, what landmarks you have or what you did it. So I found the link actually to a lost person behavior book, which is a book that actually goes through like search and rescue guides. So it is starting to give me the willies.
I mean, I just
like the more I look into this stuff, the more it's getting weird.
And they'll always find, like, the ones that they do find, they never have any like signs of like cause of death. Like, why are these people dead? The heart just stops beating. Not like a heart attack or a stroke. The heart just stops.
Also, why are berries apparently a thing? Why is changes to clothing apparently a thing? I mean, I don't know about you, but the last thing I'm gonna do if I'm lost is like just take off an article of clothing and then leave it behind. Yeah. Not even use it for some sort of practical thing. I mean, that makes me wonder if somebody, if they got redressed.
There was a story about a boy who I believe was like 3 or 4 years old, barely even knew how to put on his clothes. And he went missing, same thing. They searched the whole area within, a couple miles radius, no signs at all. And when they finally found him, they found, I I don't think they found full remains, but they found like a skull cap and some teeth or something like that. And they found his shoes multiple weeks or months later. The shoes were in pristine condition, perfectly clean somehow, and his clothing was folded on like a rock nearby, which doesn't make any sense. A 3 or 4-year-old kid, doesn't know how to fold clothing, probably.
I'm always going to go back to base human instincts for some of these, I mean, they've had, like, for example, they had a serial killer who was a cannibal, and he specialized, quote unquote, in children. And when they caught this guy, I think it was in like the 1800s. When they caught him, they actually found like a stew pot, that had like child's remains in it that he had cooked up. So I definitely am not saying there's not a human element to this, but some of these cases are just strange. Like this, I mentioned it earlier, the guy that went missing for 15 months. His name was Stephen Kubacki, right? So he told his dad, "Hey, I'm going to go skiing." Thank God he told someone what he was doing. Yeah. So they found the skis, they found this pole on the beach at Lake Michigan, and some footprints on the ice leading up to the lake. At which point the footprints appeared to stop. Yeah. So they also found, I guess, like his backpack, and then there you go. 15 months later, the guy shows up, 700 miles away from Lake Michigan. I mean, granted, you could travel 700 miles in 15 months, but I mean, that just seems kind of strange.
While being lost, like, it makes no sense,
In the late 70s, it's not like he had a Samsung wallet. Yeah. It is definitely weird. And then they've had cases where somebody was.
You cut out?
That's scary. I was saying they had a case where people were missing time. This one was in the Smokies. Yeah. And that's one nice thing about David Paulides and his missing 411 work is he's encouraging people to just kind of come out and share. I mean, obviously, you're going to have a lot of wackos or fakers, but it's just kind of nice that they're able to share these stories now, like that one with the veteran where he thought someone was trying to snatch him. I mean, just think about that. Like, you run into someone and you're like, "Hey, what's your problem, buddy?" And then you look at him and you're like, "You're really weird looking. Like, you're not
actually
normal.
a human.
Yeah, you're not really a real thing." I mean, maybe, I don't know.
I've had a friend tell me, man, that one day he was like riding around with a girl late at night, and like they pulled up to a corner, and there was just like this guy standing there, and for whatever reason they rolled down the window to talk to him, and like he said that like the guy's eyes were just like really big and really dark, and like his teeth were really sharp, and like he started to open up his mouth and his jaw just like opened up really, really wide, and they just
like distended and got really big. Yeah, that's really weird. Yeah,
and
H.P. Lovecraft.
He said that like it didn't like, like it looked like that's where it was going. Like it wasn't like this guy just like went and like almost ate him. Like he said that like he felt like if he would have stayed there any longer, it would have got, you know what I mean? Like he felt like it was morphing,
There's a lot of lore about shapeshifters and the whole mythological reasoning and explanation behind those things, which obviously I'm not saying they're real, I'm just saying folklore. Those things, they can turn into any human and put on their voice and their character and be in their body, and they pretty much are humans. They just use that human body to carry out whatever needs they wanted.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like I've heard of something like that. They're called skin riders. And I think it's Native American war, one of the tribes.
Well, the Germans had doppelgangers.
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, yeah, where they're your double.
Yeah,
right?
Doppelgangers. In European folklore, if you see yourself, especially like in a mirror, that means you're going to die. It's called a doppelganger.
I mean, if I saw myself in the mirror, I'd think I was going to die.
Like, not like, you know what I mean? Like, not your reflection, but like if you see like...
not like your reflection, but
like in the background behind you or something. Or fucking like...
If you're like timbers, man.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, There was even, I don't know if this has been accredited or credible, but I've heard quite a few times that Abraham Lincoln saw his doppelganger when he was sitting in a rocking chair, and he knew that he was gonna die soon, and like he even told his wife, and I think his wife wrote about it or something. I mean, I'm not sure if that's factual. I'd fact check that, but I've heard that quite a few times.
I heard, I know a little bit about Abraham Lincoln's childhood, and while he was a great man, he did have a really messed up childhood. So I wouldn't put delusions or mental illness past him. I think his father left him for like a year at a time and would beat him and throw rocks at him and stuff like that. I'm just saying,
The
could be a connection
Lincolns
there.
in general as a couple were a little bizarre. Like I believe Mary Todd, his wife, like dreamt of his death. I remember correctly before he died, and then I think Lincoln told his bodyguard to like take a break or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting. So, but I mean, this missing time one. I mean, look, we've all chuckled about missing a day. The irony is that missing a day is like normal, but missing a couple hours in your day, that's suddenly like, what is going on here?
Yeah, I can't say I've ever missed a couple hours. You know what I mean? I don't even know how you like how would you react to that? Like if you went out in the woods and it was like like fucking 2 p.m. and then like you stumble out of the woods and it's dark and you don't recall what just happened, like how would you even process
I'd
that?
be scared, man.
Yeah,
Cold.
Like, what would you even do?
Like not wearing enough clothing. I have no idea where I am. I mean, I don't know if you guys have had the pleasure of having a fever, but sometimes when you sleep through it until the fever breaks, it's like you can be really disoriented. It's kind of like taking a nap,
Yeah.
and then you wake up and you're like, "Oh, I'm late for work. I'm late for school." It's like, no, you're not, bro. It's like 4 p.m. Like, relax.
I mean, I think everybody's had an experience where, maybe they're a little bit sick or a little bit drugged or whatever it is, and they fall asleep and they wake up and, say it's dark outside. I think it's early morning or something, and it turns out that it's 3 a.m. And even that is disorienting. But, I've always feared blacking out, that kind of a thing, like just waking up and you were doing things and just not having a damn clue what happened. And I mean, for multiple days, that's just insane.
But I mean, back to the issue about people disappearing. Like, after reviewing all these cases, I've come to the conclusion that I don't think there's any human element that can describe this, either human or terrestrial. Something outside of our pocket of information on the laws of the world is causing this. You know what I mean?
So you're saying, like, even if we did really find out what was going on here, that like we wouldn't be able to interpret it, like we just wouldn't know, you know what I mean? Just beyond our comprehension.
David Palladius even said that if whatever's doing this explained it to us, we probably wouldn't grasp it. You know what I mean? Like that's just how complex this is.
Yeah.
It seems to be. He even said it seems to be like there's an advanced intelligence that is using these opportunities to snatch these people. Like usually they're snatched right before like a big thunderstorm. So it like knows when the weather's coming, you know what I mean? So it'll use that to its advantage. And then like it's returning people. Like you either look at it two ways. You look at it like aliens or like demons or something like that, or Bigfoot or whatever you want to look at it. Or you look at it the way that I'm more into like the extra dimensional shit. Like people are like walking through portals and getting teleported somewhere and being held there or something, or like in a whole new reality, or like time slips like that. But I don't know, man. Like
I'm just gonna go with something that is a bit more obvious, which is it's undiscoverable and incomprehensible. If there was someone around that understood what was going on, they're dead, or in the case of America, on a reservation, hundreds of miles away. So I don't know. It's definitely strange. I would not rule out the human predator myself. That some of these people are coming back. I mean, like for example, that's why I mentioned the gender of the guy that disappeared for 15 months. I mean, there's one major reason why Zeus, the Greek god, was known to be a philanderer is because guess what? There's some really nervous wives showing up saying, "Hey, I'm pregnant. Well, what
Yeah.
happened? Oh, it was Zeus. But that's not happening in this case. These are just regular people or kids. It's like, like, I mean, I remember making up fibs or having my sister. My sister was like infamous for running cover for us. Like all manner of strange things happened. That's why this got broken, or that's why this door was left unlocked. But these just seem like normal guys, normal people.
Yeah.
And it's like they don't have anything to hide. I mean, the kids are one exception. They know they're maybe in trouble, but it just seems very strange to me. They don't have a reason to do this. And then also that guy that disappeared for 15 months. Well, Toji's saying the Bigfoot's real.
What?
But that guy that disappeared for 15 months, he declined to be interviewed. Like, he's not making money off of this. He's like carrying on with his life. He's got a PhD.
That's
But now that I
weird.
finished that thought, I see that Toji shared that I believe in Bigfoot, which is funny because David Paulides is a cryptozoologist. That's actually kind of a black mark against his credibility, unfortunately, because he's a Bigfoot hunter.
Toji said Bigfoot is real and he tried to eat my ass. Okay.
Well, hey, some people are into that.
Yeah, I mean, I would love for you to come on the podcast one day, Toji, and tell us about how that happened, man.
Definitely.
Do you live in Canada? Because, I mean, bestiality is legal there.
Thanks, Lucy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's all move to Canada then, so we can all. I mean, that's where all the Bigfoots are going, dude. They're all going to Canada, so they can get that good ass fucking. You know what I mean?
What gets me back to the actual topic at hand, enough about Canada, is the lack of records. Like, at first they're saying, oh, well, it's because these happened a long time ago. It's like, okay, it's modern times now. Oh, now it's because we have these diverse computer systems that we can't link up. And, the information, there's no database because it would be too hard to link it all up. It's like, this is modern times.
Yeah.
This thing called a network. You can email these things. And Paulides actually said he got a start when two rangers came up to him out of uniform, and they told him specifically, we can't do anything about this officially because we're worried about reprisals. So, but this is what's going on. And then that's what kicked off David Paulides, like weird journey and research into this when, as you may have mentioned before, I think it was in part 1, where he started looking into it and realized there's some really spooky stuff going on. There's definitely connections between some of the cases.
Well, they
similarities,
all
I should say.
They all fit like a criteria, like a rubric. Like, it's really weird how specific it actually is.
I don't believe that the national parks and the national park system and the national park rangers have a clue what's going on, but I do believe that there is significant evidence that they're trying to conceal some of these old cases and files from people, and just trying to make those stories go away from 50 years ago or whatever. Because David Paulides, he had this one conversation where he called a park ranger and he said, can I get this file? It was about a girl going missing, probably. Most likely they thought it was drowning. And the case ranger was laughing. He said, look, man, you're not going to get this file. And then David Paulides explained to him that he already had several other files from, national park missings, which usually wouldn't be given to civilians and, unless they had credible reasons like personal research or whatever. And the guy was confused. He's like, what do you mean you got other files? They really do try and hide some of these cases, it seems.
Well, they're using the Freedom of Information Act to get those resources, but the parks are just, to get around that, they're denying having them, which is bullshit. They know what's going on.
Yeah.
It's their parks.
So why do you think they're doing that? Do you think it's just to cover up a pattern of incompetence, or just a natural want for secrecy? Or
I don't.
It seems kind of strange.
Anything to do with incompetence. The searchers are not incompetent. They do their job very well, and David Paulides has said that many times. It's not the searchers that are messing up these rescues. They're doing their job to the fullest and the best that they can. Dude, I think the park system, the higher ups, are covering this up because they know that it can't. They know that it's not natural. They know that something's going on, and they're allowing it to happen.
But to go back to just basic human idiocy or corruption. I would say that maybe they're just not wanting to generate hysteria. Because how dumb is that going to look? It's like, okay, Flav, you're in charge of the national park system, and tourism is down because you can't take care of our, mass disappearance problem. What are you supposed to do? Like, it was fairies. It's like,
Yeah.
you're a bureaucrat in a government job, like supposedly highly trained. Like, I'd be pretty embarrassed if I went to, I mean, maybe that's how Fox Mulder ended up the way he did. Maybe he was in charge of the park system and said it was aliens or something. Yeah, because I don't think anyone in their right mind is going to put that down in writing.
Yeah.
So maybe they are just ignoring
Hey,
it.
there was one guy that did it, man. There was this guy that was like the former defense head minister of Canada. He straight up came out and said that aliens are real. Like, he just straight up came out and said it in front of the parliament and everything, or whatever Canada has for a government. Like, so there's people coming out already, like especially like high-ranking U.S. officials and military officials around the world are coming out and saying that, hey, aliens are real and your governments are working with them. So
Yeah, but it's Canada.
what's that have to do with anything?
Sorry.
If I was an alien, I would go to Canada, dude. They probably
Well,
wouldn't
yeah,
kill
because
me.
no one would believe you.
Yeah.
it's like why trailer parks are a common target. They must do like a credibility index. Maybe they look at like someone's social media page now and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, no one's gonna believe this idiot. Let's go gun for him.
Yeah, let's go
It's
ahead
kind
and
of scary if
abduct
you think
him.
about it. We'll abduct him. No one's gonna believe it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, this time dilation thing is definitely strange.
What I don't understand
I
is
don't
with
know.
these cases, like, why is it always like, you know, what I would call like, like people that aren't homeless. Like, you never hear shit about homeless people being abducted and shit. You know what I mean? Or seeing aliens, and they're out in nature the most, sleeping in the woods and shit. You never hear anything from them about like I saw Jesus or I saw Bigfoot or the aliens tried to scoop me up. But you always hear from people that like get abducted out of their house. Man, it's weird. Like if I was an alien, I'd
I
abduct
don't
a homeless
know.
person. They're not gonna be missed. You know what I mean? Like it's just an
Yeah, I
easy
mean
way
they're
to
the
get them.
greatest competition. When the apocalypse comes, dude, the homeless people are gonna be ready. They already know all the good spots. They know what they're doing. You know?
What are you talking
I
about?
mean, I'm going to have to disagree a little because they did have a serial killer that was targeting homeless people and he was shooting them while they were sleeping. He was a real coward. And I mean, they have friends. They're just like you and I. They just have no stable home. I don't know. I think if it was homeless people that were disappearing, people would. I don't think they would
I don't
notice
think there's.
less.
Yeah,
I think they would care less, but I don't think they would notice less.
I would slag because I know in Sweden there's a huge issue with the homeless people. What happens is I I mean it's a strange comparison, but it's almost like a pimp prostitute type of situation where homeless people are recruited or forced into having like a person that they report to, and they go out on the streets and they beg for money, and then they give 90 or in some cases all of that money to the person who has them at gunpoint essentially. And a lot of the times homeless people get killed for almost no reason, and people get away with it because there's just not that much of care of investigation. But at the
Yes,
same
that's the
time, this
thing.
isn't
Is
a
care is not the same thing as knowledge. Knowing about it is different from giving a rat's ass.
I think it's a little bit different in foreign countries, though, to be fair. I couldn't see that type of thing happening in America.
I was just gonna say like, yeah, like homeless people, yeah, they're victims of a lot of crime, but I've never heard like homeless people be like, I saw aliens. You know what I mean? Like, if you were an alien, it'd be much easier to abduct someone homeless off the streets than it would be to abduct somebody from their home. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so if you go to Europe, they often tell you, like, if you ask a police officer, they strongly recommend not giving homeless people donations or money because most of the time that is just going to a gang. It's very sad.
Go into a what?
That's very
Like a
sad.
gang of
You know,
people.
yeah, people get stuck in that loop. I think that would actually be an excellent topic to discuss. It's just the state of homelessness and the future. I mean, this is off topic for now, but I live in an area where there's so many homeless that they were making enough campfires. They started fires, and these threatened homes.
Yeah.
Uh, I live in an area where I've seen so many where I actually had a guy. I was walking down the street. This was in Los Angeles, and the guy, true story, guy actually came up to me, and I'm a pretty genial guy in real life, and I just got to talking to the guy, and it turns out he was a homeless guy, but what he would do is he'd make money cleaning cars for dealerships. And he took one look at me, and he's like, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Well, I'm here looking for like an ATM." And he actually escorted me out of that neighborhood. And then I was looking around, and there's just packs and packs of bumps. There had to have been like maybe 2 dozen of these homeless guys hanging out.
Yeah.
It's definitely a big problem. They're definitely a very vulnerable segment of our society. And like I said, we know about it. We just don't seem to care.
In Camden, New Jersey, and also in like the outskirts of Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, they've actually shut down on homeless people like begging a lot. Like, you always used to see driving by on your way to work or whatever, probably 4 or 5 people walking through the street with a sign up asking for money. They don't allow that anymore. They have police people monitoring that stuff now. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah, well, I was about to say, how do you feel about that? I mean, it's
I
illegal here
mean,
for homeless people to like beg for money and hold up signs, but like they still do it.
there's a huge issue with homeless people being dependent on drugs and just using that money for drugs. Like, I know that because I used to volunteer at a homeless shelter,
Yeah,
and you were only allowed to give each homeless person like 2 packets of sugar, because they'd even try and like get as much sugar as possible just to get a high off of that to substitute their other problems.
yeah,
And
Yeah. The Skid Row is infamous for that. Like the drug dealers will even help you sign up for benefits so that they can come by, and tax you on check day. So they're definitely horrifically taken advantage of. We've all seen the movies and read books where homeless people just disappear into vans
yeah,
for evil experiments and that sort of stuff. And really, I wouldn't put it past a group of. I mean, there's what 7-8 billion of us on the planet. I wouldn't put it past a tiny percentage actually just preying on these guys, even more so than what Lucy mentioned earlier about the Swedish like gangs, where they're going after these bumps. So
yeah.
I
There's
mean, the problem is what do you do? It's like I think it was one of the Scandinavian countries where they had this great idea where it's like maybe it was either there or New York. I do this all the time. It's one of 2 extreme geographic locations, but they were catering to these guys, which is fine. I think you should get them a shave and a cheap
yeah,
suit, get them medication if they need it, try to help them out. I mean, I don't think we should throw anyone away. And it's they interviewed some of these guys, and it was a nightmare. It's like imagine being really mentally ill, like schizophrenic or depressed, and then being left by yourself, and you just start kind of trashing your place because guess what? You don't feel well, mentally there, and that just builds up and
yeah,
builds up and builds up. So when they go back to see these guys, like they're pack rats, and it's like, yeah, this actually made it worse, like because I couldn't leave and I was left here by myself, and they're not being ungrateful; they're crying for help.
yeah,
It's like you can't just say like, okay, well, off here, everything's going to be fine. We're just going to give you everything you need, except for the things you really need, like friends or
yeah.
professional help, or a hobby or a job or a skill set. It's like, they're not complete people in some cases. So,
Well, I mean, I think it's like what, like 50 to 60% of our homeless are veterans, and I think it's like 70% are mentally ill. Like that's a problem, you know. Like the
yeah, vets are
typical,
shooting themselves every day.
yeah, the typical view of homeless people that I think most people have are like lazy motherfuckers that wouldn't work. But that's not the case. A lot of our homeless were hardworking military men or men and women in general, and then they got struck down with a mental illness. Like,
There's also really a difference between a homeless guy and a hobo. Like to me, a hobo is someone that chooses to be rootless. That okay, maybe they didn't choose to be completely homeless, but that's like their way of life now. and they manage it. Like I knew a guy named Gene. He's a great guy. He was an architect, if he was to be believed, which I did. He was an architect, but he was also very paranoid. And for some reason, I was able to get through to the guy because I always treat homeless people like human. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I treat them like human beings. And we just struck up this interesting friendship. So I got to observe, it's like when you hang out with your friends, you observe your buddies and you see how they act, and you're like, okay, I guess I won't act that way to this guy because he reacted this way.
Yeah.
And but I remember I felt so guilty about forgetting to fix him like a Thanksgiving plate, and he just smiled at me with a shit-eating grin, and he's like, well, I've been to all these churches. LA's got a lot of churches, so he had like 2 or 3. He had more Thanksgiving meals than I had.
Yeah.
But to me, I felt like he was more of like a hobo guy. He obviously had some sort of mental issue going on, but anytime I ran into him, he was always like real happy, take life as he could. He'd always scrape by, get enough money for like his Captain Black. Never asked me for a dime. Like he never, and that's the thing. He never ever asked me for cash. If he got anything from me, it's because I was the one that initiated getting a cup of coffee, having breakfast, eating lunch with the guy.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting. But I do think there's a difference. I think that, obviously there is, right? You got the homeless guys where they're just hopeless, like their parents passed away and that was all they had in the world, and now they can't take it anymore. They can't be normal. Well, they never were. It's just they had their safety net. And then I feel that you have guys kind of like Gene, where they may be a little touched, but they've also that's like their career. Yeah, it's kind of weird. You know what I mean?
Well,
I think if you are smart, you can get by in life. I mean, it's not something that 99% of people would enjoy doing, but I think you definitely can get by if you're smart enough and you want to work and stuff, and just living off the grid under the radar. I used to know a guy who had no job, didn't really have a name anywhere, but he would just travel the country by rail, and he didn't have a home, but he had a happy life.
I mean, we've kind of diverged because we were discussing the national park disappearance, but I do believe that we should revisit the homeless topic because that's really, like the way Tony Blair put it, it's a scar on the conscience of the world. There's no reason for this anymore. Like, we may have had homeless people in the past, people made poor decisions, but, the communities also had a way of taking care of like vagrants. They call them vagrant houses. We just don't, we have homeless shelters, but some of them are more like VIP clubs because guess what? They don't have the capacity to help with these guys.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, we live in a era now where homelessness and hunger and dehydration could be totally fixed if we chose to. We're choosing not to fix these issues because it's not financially acceptable. And that's the problem with it right now. Once we switch from that, where's the profit to like, let's help humanity, that's when humanity will overcome. Until then, we're just going to be running in circles.
I don't think so. I think if we have societies that throw relatives in rest homes, those are people's blood relatives. Now imagine how they're just going to treat some guy.
Oh yeah, but when we can finally,
you and I kind of discussed maybe, maybe.
I think the treatment of mentally ill people in America is still horrid. I mean, obviously,
it's
horrible.
That's I imagine a time where there's going to be a giant, like a balloon in an industry. We'll just call them psychic chaplains or something, psychic, or psychologists, that sort of stuff, psychiatrists, mental health professionals, because they got their work cut out for them. And then eventually that field is not going to die, but it's going to get a little narrower. But I really do think that we should be doing like the shotgun approach with mental health, because all these shootings and other things are showing that people are losing their minds. I mean, all of us know someone who's a little touched.
I don't think that time's coming soon. So, like, because
of course
take a guess at how long the average appointment wait time for a clinical child psychologist is, just to get an appointment to check in and see if they could get a follow-up one.
It's like a month or
Wow.
two.
I'm gonna guess.
Nah, it's like 9 months.
Wow, 9 months. I was gonna go with
Yeah.
like weeks. So, but yeah, you see, that's kind of the thing is we have a lot more people. Actually, Flav and I were discussing something like this yesterday. Remember, I was talking about the parenting pool. The parenting pool is pretty low quality. No offense to any of the moms and dads out there, like we all got great ones, but I feel that it's just compounding. It's like crazy people are having children, and their children, for better or worse, they start off innocent. I don't know if I'm not going to condemn them just because their parents had bad genes, but it's like, you know, it's not helping matters when they have an obviously insane, one or two parents. Like you
That's
mentioned,
who they're learning from.
Abraham Lincoln. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's definitely, that would imprint on the child for a lifetime. That could change his whole. I mean, a child's course of life is decided by his parents and what influence they impart on him.
some of the most terrible people I know that I've had the displeasure to meet, like you look at their parents and it's like my mother was like a druggie, my dad's just a complete douche. These people, they don't stand a chance. They don't have any of that love or that warmth, or if they do, it's all directed to themselves or
Yeah.
twisted up some weird code, that none of us would ever operate by. It's like, this isn't D&D, guys. Like, just be nice. You don't need some convoluted code of ethics to justify what you do. So.
So
raising people with emptiness.
before we run up on our time for the night's broadcast and give our closing thoughts, let's go ahead and field some unpopular opinions from Reddit. Let's see. Unpopular opinion, hot post. These are going to be recent. Loading them. Let's see. Smokers shouldn't get any extra breaks while working.
Okay, that's just inhumane. I mean, do you want a guy showing up with a Armalite 14 in your office on a Friday? Because that's how you get a guy showing up with an assault rifle at your office on a Friday.
So you think that allowing people to smoke at work, having smoke breaks, is keeping mass shootings down? Is that what I'm hearing?
Some people deal with things differently, and if the guy's not like cutting himself at home or beating his wife or something, then I mean, it's a cigarette. Like, I've smoked and worked before. Usually it's like the busier you are and the more engaged you are, the less distracted you are. Like, I don't need to have a cigarette. It's just kind of nice to have one to take the edge off, I guess. But that's a hard argument to as far as being an employee who sold my time to an employer, I would obviously run it by them first, and then I would definitely make it worthwhile. Like, they're going to get back each of those 45-minute smoke breaks that I take.
45 minutes to take a smoke?
I'm just messing with you, bro. But that's what I would do.
I think, what's going on...
I don't think you're entitled to it, but I think you could work that in.
But I think what it is the people have a problem with it, and I've seen it from working jobs like that, where if you smoke cigarettes, you can go take a break. They'll usually let you go sit down outside on a bench and you can smoke a cigarette. Like, I'm talking about 5, 10, 15-minute break smoking a cigarette. But if you don't smoke, you can't go take a break. Or if you ask to take a break, the manager's usually like, oh, you don't need it. But if you're like, hey, I need to go smoke, they're like, oh, go smoke. I mean, that's coming from fast food, but in fast food, man, smoke breaks are taken seriously. Sit down breaks aren't taken seriously. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, smoking is gross, though. If you're going to go then handle food.
Well, I mean, you got to wash your hands before you come back.
I mean, the restaurant industry is one where I don't really see smoke breaks being an option that often. I mean, restaurants vary, but here where I live in New Jersey, everywhere is crowded, and every single restaurant, I've worked in multiple before, they're always just slammed for 5 hours straight. So, I think it's fair to say, people should be allowed in the rules to have a smoke break. But when it comes to jobs like that, I could see where that could get abused really easily.
All right, so we got a funny one. Mayonnaise by itself is a fantastic snack.
Snack?
Yeah.
Honestly, if I built myself up enough, yeah.
Bro,
we're going.
It would take time, but
here, guys.
I don't know, bro. I don't think mayonnaise is a fantastic snack. Okay, so here's a serious one. If the marriage is called off, do you believe that the woman should give the man the ring back?
I believe that's the whole point. I can't remember the specifics. I believe that's actually a thing where if you get engaged and there's no real malfeasance on the guy's part. I mean, obviously, if the guy's like dogging around,
Yeah.
that's a little different. But I do think that I think that's part of the contract is like here's the shiny ring, and just go from there. So I mean, I'd be inclined to think that it would be courteous to return it. I don't think it would be a good idea to try to like sue your boo
Yeah.
or your
Sue your
ex.
boo. Don't sue the 2019.
don't
Don't
sue,
sue the boo. You feel
don't
me?
sue the boo. The
Yeah.
boo will get mad, and then you'll never see the ring again because it'll go down like a garbage disposal. Now, here's one for you, which I find interesting. You see,
Yeah.
Kathy agrees with it. So, one thing I find interesting is blindly praising all military personnel as detrimental to society. Now, I'm just going to
I
let you
agree.
guys roll with that one.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I don't like bootlickers, bro. Fuck a bootlicker. Like, should you respect them for their work? Yeah, but they're still serving you. Like the military is serving the U.S. people. You know what I mean? They're doing the same shit the cops are doing, but on a bigger level overseas. You know what I mean? Like they're out there protecting us from other people, and the police protect us from ourselves a little bit. Which, but then again,
Well,
you
what about
also
like firefighters?
oh, definitely. I got all the respect in the world. See, here's the thing, man. Firefighters, EMTs, all the respect in the world for. Never gonna have a problem with any of those guys.
So,
But that's because
ask,
they don't try to
I've
assert
seen,
authority over you. Military
uh,
personnel and police that try to assert authority over you, that's where it becomes a dangerous situation. That's where the
uh,
bootlicking becomes a problem. You know what I
what do
mean?
you think, Lucy?
So probably an unpopular opinion, but if somebody wants to go fight a stupid war that, probably whether it's Bush or Obama or all these presidents that have fought stupid wars in the past, I don't care. You can do whatever you want. I don't think it's necessarily highly moral and they should be held at a high standard because they did that. You know what I mean? If they want to do it, that's whatever, that's them. But I'm not going to be expected to praise them. And like if you look at the NFL protests, I mean, I understand where people are coming from, angry about the causes of people taking a kneel and stuff, but at the same time,
Yeah.
it's America. I don't understand why some people are so polarly, like, just
Well, it's
completely
like
outraged against that. Like,
Colin Kaepernick, like when he took a knee, like if you have a violent protest, everybody fucking is mad at you. You have a peaceful protest, everybody's fucking mad at you. Like
well, it's America. I don't understand how we
exactly.
shouldn't reserve the right to have whether it's the freedom of speech or the freedoms of silence and protests. You know what I mean? I thought that's what all America was about. And you see patriots saying, "Oh, they're not standing for the flag. Shoot them. They're fucking commies." Like, no, that's the whole thing about America is that we have those rights to
Yeah.
speak up against the general public
Well,
and
there's
whatnot.
definitely the indoctrinated masses that, when it comes to America, they're pretty much just America's echo chamber. You know what I mean? America can do no
Hmm.
wrong. I'm patriotic as hell. I bleed red, white, and blue. Like that doesn't make you a good American. That makes you a shitty American. Because the Constitution was written for you to be a sentinel of your own liberty, and for you to keep your government in line. So when you just yes man your government, you're letting down the country that you love so much.
You see, now that we're done talking about Kaepernick or whatever other self-entitled millionaire raised by really rich people, as to say, my opinion on the military is similar to Kathy. Like, I think that you should give them respect, but I think you also need to be careful where you come from. I mean, obviously, people may think I'm overthinking this, but I don't think you should pity them. I don't think you should go and be like, "Oh, you're doing a job that like nobody else wants to do." At worst, I would say something like, if somebody called me on it, I'd say they're doing something that I'm not brave enough to even attempt.
Yeah.
Like joining the military. I mean, obviously, I'm older now in years. Perhaps I could have gotten a technical job, being a mechanic or some other technician, which is also a very useful job. But we're talking about military in general. I have members of the military in my family, and they it's a job.
Yeah.
Like they're paid to do this, so it's like, okay, well, I'm really worried that you have to go to like Serbia or something. It's like it's the job. That's what we do. Those are the guys I admire. Are the ones where they're just like, they're not really the I'm just doing my job guys. Like they're not. They're just like regular people. Like they have a contract and they're fulfilling the contract. It's just it happens to be in the job where there's a high amount of danger, and that's one reason why I do. Well, I respect police mainly just as a matter of survival because they're cops, and you can talk yourself into a radio car any day of the week.
Yeah.
If you talk long enough and you're insulting enough, they're going to take you away. Do you deserve it? I don't know. Maybe that's a free speech issue, but you're definitely also wasting their time.
Yeah.
But as far as the soldiers go, I mean, I know guys that they went to like the Citadel and stuff like that, and then some of them are really just gung ho. America, patriots. They signed up to like shoot people that are bad guys. I have friends that joined just because their family was in a certain country.
Yeah.
Like they were Korean guys. I hate to say hyphenated American, but he is a guy that was born in Korea, like two, came over to America. Well, his family went back to Korea for like their retirement, and he basically specifically joined the military to angle to get back to the Korean Peninsula, which is where he ended up. And he had some very good, respectable reasons to go. And I would trust that kid with my life.
Yeah.
But it's I do feel kind of bad, even though I said earlier I don't think it should come from a position of pity. But I do feel kind of bad for like the mechanics. It's like not every guy in the military is like Rambo. Some of these guys, it's like, hey, how much weapons training do you have? They have basic, and then whatever they need to do to upkeep that.
Yeah.
They're just basically regular guys. They're technicians. They're the guys in Star Wars that run away from the fights, because they don't have a gun. That's not their job. They're not. They may be in the army, but they're not really a soldier. I don't know. Maybe I'd get my ass beat for saying it that way.
You'd probably get your ass beat for saying that.
But you know what I mean. It's
Yeah,
like I feel kind of bad for those guys.
But like they have a very important job,
Yes, they do. They do a very important job, and it's still a job that's people aren't brave enough to do.
I have a high amount of respect for Army doctors, man. Army doctors and Army medics and stuff like that, like in MPs, military police, like
what was interesting
really
what was interesting about this unpopular opinion was someone pointed out that like, yeah, I live in just like Finland, where all members of the military are basically conscripts. So when you say that you're a member, like a soldier, they laugh at you. The direct quote is they laugh at you and talk about how they don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah.
But it's a little different in the areas that rely more on professional soldiering. And, it is kind of a means to an end. Well, guess what? The Romans did the exact same thing, guys. They pulled out a carrot and said, hey, if you join the Legion and go kill a bunch of barbarians, you're going to get some land and you're going to get paid. That's not very different from today, which is you're going to get trained and we're going to send you to college. And we'll even help you with like home ownership if you manage to play your cards right. Because basically, if you don't default on a mortgage, you can always rely on the VA to like do refinancing. But as soon as you default once, then you're done.
What does that mean, default?
Default is when you don't pay the mortgage.
Oh, okay.
Like if you screw up on the loan, they won't help you again. But until that point, they'll always try to help you refi. So I mean, some people I think are a little too cynical. And it's just interesting. It's an interesting topic for me because personally, in the real world, like when I worked retail, I used to card a lot of people, and it's like if they had a military ID, I'd actually shake their hand and I would thank them, because I have members of the family that are in the military, and most of the time they were just like, oh yeah, thanks, But then you see these edgelords online where it's like, this is what you should say if people thank you for your service, and it's like, how about we just go with the social contract where I'm just trying to be nice and not offensive, and you just be nice in return. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
asking you to go out on a date. I'm just asking, like, let's have a little, like, social interaction here, a little humanity between the two of us. And there were guys I ran into where they were like, these kids had like fancy class rings, you know, and it makes me wonder if they were like in the SEALs or something. And I told them, I'm like, yeah, I have friends in the military, and they said, well, you got two more now. You know what I mean? That just
Yeah.
made me feel pretty good. So I wasn't trying to come on to them or get advantage over them. I was just genuinely thanking them because I'm into military history and military. I know like a fraction of what goes on, and that's enough for me to just be like very appreciative of the guys that put themselves in harm's way,
Yeah.
whether or not it's a just war. There, there's an American out there right now, because we're all American here, that is helping someone, and he's in a uniform or she's in a uniform. That's all I got to say on the topic.
All right. Well, we've hit our hour runtime. So, any closing thoughts before we take it off till tomorrow night?
You mind
Sure.
if I start this one, Lucy?
Go ahead.
All I know is I'm really baffled with these national park disappearances. I know that was the initial topic. Uh, there's some really creepy stuff. It raises the hair on the back of my neck. Uh, Learning that there were people that encountered this whole uncanny valley thing gives me the heebie-jeebies, and I'm really kind of at a loss where to go from now. Because I mean, if it was really just humans, I think they would find evidence of it. If it was animals, I think that's a little different. But that doesn't scratch the surface on these disappearance cases with like the little boy with the going with his grandma, and then
Yeah.
suddenly it wasn't his grandma because she told him to do something he didn't want to do, and then things got strange, you know. And the fact that there seems to be these things with children missing, I mean, like I said earlier, if someone wanted to kill their kid, God forbid, they could cook up this sort of story. Oh, little Joey went and disappeared. Well, the cops are sitting there going, "Yeah, sure, little Joey got taken away by fairies." You know, they're going to start investigating the parents. Well, what happens when that kid shows up a day later,
Yeah.
in a daze, saying really crazy stuff like, "I was in the sunlight for 24 hours." It's like you spent the whole day in quote unquote the sun. So there's definitely some very strange things going on. I think it's interesting that there are guys like David Polides out there trying to figure out what's up. But this is an ongoing thing, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was something crazy behind it.
Well, I would go ahead and encourage our viewers because there's way more than we could touch on here to look it up yourself. Missing 411, David Palladius. Very interesting. I would watch all the. There's a YouTube channel called Death by Meme that has like a compilation of them all, and just watch it because it's really interesting, and you'll start to see that these things they just don't seem to have any real relation to a human element. Lucy, any closing thoughts?
I think we'll cover this extensively in this podcast soon. But I'd just like to say regarding the military, I believe that our military and army has been balls deep in the whole war idea and warmongering for way too long, and it's just getting worse. Trump recently, I mean not recently, but in March, Trump signed the biggest military budget a country has ever had in
Yeah.
history. So I definitely like to get into that. I think there's a big problem there.
I do think that would be an interesting topic.
Yeah, we'll definitely. Next time on Through the Looking Glass, we'll get into that. This has been Through the Looking Glass, Episode 8, Disappearances International Park, and we will see you back here tomorrow at 6:50 p.m. EST. Now, good New Year, everybody. Thanks for bearing with us through our hours that we got mixed up through the holiday season, but we should be back on a regular viewing schedule. Until next time, this is Through the Looking Glass, signing out.